I watch Paul Newman rise from and approach me. I am not afraid. This is a moment I've dreamed about. His fingers reach out to me and brush across my lips. Nothing is as sweet as you, he tells me, just before his drops to the floor.
Wonderful. Just wonderful. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Bim.
Oh my gosh, welcome back.
I'm glad to be here.
What I enjoy is looking across this recording desk and looking into your eyes and knowing that we're about to share some filth. Every week we leave here a little bit closer than we were when we first walked in.
We just get, nice and cozy in here. And I like that. Share some secrets and personality traits that we didn't know the other had. I appreciate that.
And then we get to share it with the lovely listeners who also then confirm to us that we are not alone.
Yes.
They are here with us.
Yes.
No Michael Jackson. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. This week we have something quite special. We have an ensemble.
Yes.
A number of first objects.
Yeah, a little group project, I guess.
And we're all getting A's. A's. What are we talking about?
Today we are talking about the golden age of Hollywood Baes.
Listen, so it's no surprise to anyone that Nicole and I fancy across the ages, across genres, across all sorts of lines that humans arbitrarily draw.
Right.
And today we are looking at a specific time and a specific place and specific people.
Right.
And some of the people that we're covering include
Paul Newman.
Yes, my first ever blonde crush.
Same. He's he's really the OG blonde and blue for me.
Truly the OG. Not just for you. I feel like for most human beings, he is like the one, the only, and everybody else is like a pale imitation thereof.
Right. And then we have tall, dark, and handsome Cary Grant.
Hey, listen.
Oh my gosh.
Listen.
I love him so much.
Can I just say also a British?
Oh, right.
Yes. We're very proud. Very proud of our son. He was called Archie back in the day.
Yeah.
And then he changed it to Carrie, which I understand why.
Yeah.
No shade to all the lovely Archies out there in the world. Then we also have this.
You gotta say words again, Bill.
Okay.
You need your words.
Mr. Gene Kelly.
Ooh, the dancer himself.
Listen, just hips just hypnotic.
Yeah.
Hey, hypnotic hips. Hey, look. It's not my fault I'm a wordsmith. I love Gene Kelly so much, and I have such strong feelings for him because he's also one of those people that I discovered when I was a kid. And I was like, oh yeah, once again, I've confirmed that I think I'm straight. So God bless Gene Kelly and his dancing. And last of all, who do we have?
Gregory Peck.
Yes.
Those eyebrows, man.
My favorite feature on a man.
And that stern voice that you love.
Listen, Gregory Peck ticks pretty much all the boxes. And he's just got this... The thing that no one ever talks about, everyone talks about his eyebrows, which are spectacular.
Yeah.
People don't talk about his lips.
You're going to have to talk to me about that a little later.
I have pictures, so don't worry about it. We're going to have some visual fucking aids, right? Because this is an education. Thirst is something that we'd like to kind of share.
Right.
And I'm happy to do that today with you and with our listeners.
As our listeners probably realized, in that list, we did not have anyone of color. That is because at that point in Hollywood, men of color, black men specifically, were not allowed to be thirst objects in our modern parlance.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's even if they got screen time to begin with.
Right.
I feel like the golden age that people talk about is referring to tans for pale people, as opposed to, this gilded age. So when we talk about the golden age, we are inevitably almost always talking about white people.
Yeah.
Which is problematic in its own way. And like Nicole said, we will get into that.
Okay, Ben.
Yes.
Let's get started with Paul Newman.
Oh, listen.
Oh, my gosh.
I have such complex and not so complex thoughts about Paul Newman.
I mean, I didn't even know what I was feeling as a child watching these movies, that coming on like cable, old channels and stuff like that. Watching it with my mom and my grandmother. But yeah, he was so pretty.
I think that's the thing. Like, he's such a stereotypically good-looking man.
Yeah.
Just like not too tall, not too short, not too this, not too that. Just he's the Goldilocks of hotness.
He looks like Michelangelo's David.
Yes.
you know.
It's the face, right? He
Yeah.
has those cheekbones, which
Yeah.
no one ever talks about because of all the other stuff.
Right.
But he has like these amazing arresting cheekbones, and he has like what our lovely friend Daniel Mallory Ortberg called a cruel mouth. And it's just like this, you know, really full bottom lip, especially for a white guy, because shout
Yeah.
out to you guys. But he has this really like you said, like David. His face
Yeah.
is so beautiful. It's
Because
so
it's got these little
crafted.
curls, you know, the little blonde curls that, you know, he kept under control. I don't think we ever really saw them.
They
like,
never went
long.
wild.
Yeah.
No.
But man, he was so pretty.
He really was. And part of his prettiness, I think, was the fact that he didn't seem to care about how pretty he was. You know what I mean? He was
had
very
this-
careless about, like, the way he walked was very kind of like, I guess I'm pretty.
He had this kind of lean that was kind of like, do you remember that show, My So-Called Life? Yes. With Jared Leto.
Before he was problematic.
Yes, and he
Yeah.
played this character named Jordan Catalano, and the main character, Angela Chase, was like, just look at him lean. And that's how Paul Newman was. Like, he had
The
this
way
little
he
lean,
leans.
you know, he would just kind of have his hand on his hip and lean a little bit, and you were just like, yeah. There's this great picture of him with like his Star of David necklace. He's shirtless, and he's leaning in like some khaki pants.
Use your words, Nicole.
I have none for him. He looks so good.
But that thing about being very insouciant, I remember when I was a kid and I was like in my pretentious stage of being really into like vintage Hollywood, which I think every child should go through. But I remember reading lots and lots about old Hollywood and reading about Paul Newman. And one of the things I really loved was him kind of mocking, you know, the noise around the beauty of his eyes. And he said, you know, he could envision his epitaph when he died. And it was like, here lies Paul Newman, who died of failure because his blue eyes turned brown. And I thought, oh, I love it. He's so aware of the fact that these are all just like material trappings because Paul Newman came in the most beautiful package.
Yes.
Just abs.
And a slight man. Like, he wasn't very
Slight.
tall.
No, wasn't thick.
Yeah.
He
I
was
mean,
just, like I said, the Goldilocks.
Yeah.
Just right.
now the first film that I remember seeing Paul Newman in was Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Yes.
Which is an adaptation of Tennessee Williams' play. Paul Newman played Brick, a retired football player.
Yep.
Maggie is his wife, as played by Elizabeth Taylor in the film.
Amazing.
Just incomparable. Brick and Maggie are married, but they're not having, you know, marital relations. Because in the source material, Brick is closeted, right?
Classic Tennessee Williams.
Right. And there are a lot of conflicts in the family and stuff like that. And I'm going to play this clip that comes at the end of the film, right? All the stuff has been resolved. Everybody's moving forward with their lives and everything. Brick is ready to make the marital relations happen, right?
Sure he is.
Now, in this particular clip, his sister-in-law is being real terrible or
Yeah,
whatever.
she's terrible.
Yeah, and so he's trying to, you know, move past her drama.
Right.
So here we go with that.
Maggie?
Yes?
Come on up here.
Hey.
Yes, sir.
Woo! Now, if you have Paul Newman telling you, come on up here, wouldn't you say, yes, sir?
I feel like Elizabeth Taylor was doing, she was a mouthpiece for so many people. Yes, sir. I'll be there presently.
Man. And a little later, he's like, you know, we're through with lies and liars in this household. Lock the door. And Maggie reaches behind her to lock the door, and she's trembling. It's like, she can't even lock the door because she's so ready for this
Listen,
moment.
That poor woman has been with her closeted husband for so long.
Oh,
and
my
then he's kind of
gosh.
like, hey, let's try something. And she's like, oh, thank God.
Yes.
I so understood Maggie in that, both because, like, yeah, it's been a while, but also just kind of like, and also look who I'm married to. This is unfair for me. Whew. Paul Newman, man. He packed a punch.
Man.
Hey, listen. Wow. It's very difficult to talk about Paul Newman. I mean, the talent is undeniable, but it's very difficult not to talk about just how wonderfully he filled a frame.
Yeah.
He had presence.
Yes.
Which is not to
Arresting,
romanticize.
yeah.
Right. And you don't want to romanticize the past too much because, you know, it had all its attendant problems.
Yeah.
But Paul Newman really was a movie star. Like when he walked on stage, onto the set, I'm sure people just kind of fainted dead away. But then on screen, it really comes alive. It really kind of draws your eye. And he's very, very good at that. I want to talk a little bit about Paris Blues.
One of my favorites.
Listen, so I'm really not here for giving cookies to anyone who finds girls like me, which is to say black girls, attractive, because obviously you have eyes. I'm clearly very hot. That's neither here nor there. So in Paris Blues, Paul Newman plays a character called Ram, who is this musician, and he and his friend, played by Sidney Poitier, are in Paris to, I guess, meet all the jazz greats of the age. And when he's there, he kind of spots this pretty girl, classic train shit, and kind of moves on in there. Now, this woman is played by, the woman he spots, the beautiful tourist, is played by Diane Carroll. She's there with her friend, who's played by Joanne Woodward, who, as we know, is married or was married to Paul Newman. This is the point at which he hears her and kind of moves to her. Hold on to your hats.
No, monsieur. S'il vous plaît, leave my baggage here. Leave it here.
Excuse me.
What? Do you speak English?
Yeah, you need some help?
Oh, do I need some help? My girlfriend is off chasing another porter because he took her bags and left.
Yeah, well, they'll do that. You want to wait for her here, is that it?
Yes, please. Can you explain to him that I want to leave my...
Mademoiselle attend ici. Laissez les bagages et revenez tout à l'heure. Tout à l'heure.
Ah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think I can manage by myself.
Girlfriend as pretty as you
So
are?
this is when he kind of lays it out, and
She's a white girl.
It might be hard to find. All these white girls look alike.
Bitch! So listen, I'm really not here for clapping for white men who find non-white women attractive.
Absolutely
Fuck you,
not.
to be very fucking honest.
You get no cookies for that, and you
Literally
get no
nothing.
cookies for that, okay?
Now, like I said, when I watched that as a teen, I remember thinking to myself, all right, so who's going to build a time machine? Because I need to get back to that exact fake train set and have Paul Newman, first of all, speak French in a terrible accent, followed by saying, hey, listen, I'm not asking about your friend, innit?
Right.
I'm chatting about you, fam. I'm looking at you. Listen.
He had all that bass in his voice.
Listen.
He was like, do you need some help? Yes, as a matter of fact, I do, Mr. Sexy Man Paul Newman.
What I also love about that clip, which we will put, we'll put a link to it on our Tumblr, is that when she falls upon him, the Diane character, she's called Connie, which first of all, great name, and she touches his arm to kind of get his attention and say, oh, and then there's a moment where he looks down at her hand on his arm. And watching it as a grown-up, I swear to God, my bra actually was lit aflame because I was like, oh yeah, that's how you look at someone.
Yes.
With your eyes.
Yes.
What? All right. Ooh, okay. But yeah, I absolutely fucking love Paul Newman. I just, that scene in particular where it just kind of has all of his potency wrapped up in just like a couple of sentences.
But, to move on a little bit, Paul Newman actually put action to those looks that he gave.
Yes, he did. He did.
So he was an activist. He was part of the March on Washington in 1963.
Wearing a very natty suit.
Oh, he looked so good. He had a little facial hair going on, and then he's in these glasses he was too cool.
He was. Moving on from that, to kind of go back to the philanthropy thing, the activism thing, I often think about, you couldn't be a semi-powerful man in Hollywood at that time and not realize the structural inequalities that were going on. And I think for many people, the urge was to put your head down, just do your work, get the fuck out, go home, whatever. And Paul was like, no, I'm going to take some of this political capital that I do have in this industry and I'm going to do something with it. And so he stood and he said things, he did things. And there's something that came up this year, actually, and it was from Susan Sarandon, who, bless her, she is what she is. But she was talking about making a film with Paul Newman. And she was saying that he took a pay cut when he found out that Sarandon was making less than her male co-stars.
And look at the men, Emma Stone came forward and said she got equal pay because her male stars insisted upon it and gave up something of theirs. That happened to me with Paul Newman at one point when I did a film with him ages ago. When they said it was favored nations, but they only meant the two guys, he stepped forward and said, well, I'll give you part of mine. So he was, he was a gem.
So I love the idea of somebody basically putting their money where their mouth was, literally understanding that, okay, there is a problem here. Now, of course, he didn't go to the studio and fix it.
Right.
But he did a very practical fucking thing. He was like, all right, have some of mine because I'm clearly getting more than you and you should be getting the same as us. So he cut his salary. And again, no cookies for doing the fucking right thing, except you can have like a crumb for actually making a stand with your actual actions and rectifying a situation.
Now, Paul Newman has, he has passed on into the
The Great Blue Beyond?
Yes.
Yeah.
But maybe some of our younger listeners know him from his salad dressings. But the thing about his salad dressings, not only are they great,
Sounds so euphemistic. The thing about his salad dressing.
but 100% of the profits and royalties from the dressings go to charities.
Listen.
To his foundation, Newman's own foundation, that goes to all these different charity organizations and stuff like that. So he is still giving back beyond the grave. Isn't
Listen,
that beautiful?
What a legacy.
Just
what
amazing.
A fucking legacy. That
How
man has
could you-
he's been dead since 2008, and basically money that he has made posthumously
Yes.
is somehow saving lives out there in the world. It's doing
Yes.
good. How many of us can say that even as we're alive right here on Earth?
Right.
Shout out to you, Paul Newman.
Amen.
You hot activist, you.
You sexy ghost.
Sexy ghost. Yeah.
I'm going to show you how simple it is. You please me, and I'll please you.
All right, let's move on to one of your faves.
Oh my gosh. I'm a big Hitchcock fan, Alfred Hitchcock. Love his movies. Cary Grant was in at least 4 of them. Just beautiful, charming, creepy. Like,
That's the Holy Trinity
I
right there.
mean-
Beautiful, charming, and creepy.
but that's what you have to be, right? To be in a Hitchcock film, to be the lead in the Hitchcock film. You have to have like this little bit of, yes, you're charming, yes, you're beautiful to look at, but also, do you have an ulterior motive? What's
Right.
going on beneath the surface?
What evil lurks?
Yes, and Cary Grant has that to a T.
Yes.
He's also just, like I say, he's tall. He was 6'2". He's 6'2".
Yeah, he was.
So one of my favorite scenes is from North by Northwest, which stars Cary Grant and Eva Marie Saint.
Yes.
In this scene, Cary Grant's character, Roger Thornhill, he's on the run. People are after him. Eva Marie Saint, her character Eve, she knows the deal. She knows that he's running. The banter, the sexual tension.
Yeah.
It is a master class in writing flirtation.
Think how lucky I am to have been seated here.
Well, luck had nothing to do with it.
Fate?
I tipped the steward $5 to seat you here if you should come in.
Hold on.
Is that a proposition?
I never discuss love on an empty stomach,
You've already eaten.
but you haven't.
So she says, but you haven't. And he looks at her and reaches for his food so that he can,
You know
can
what?
get that full stomach popping and they can get it going.
The inherent flirtation that was enforced by various codes during this time means that every word seems laden with meaning and possibility and potential and
Yes.
just filth. I mean, you haven't eaten. Bitch, I don't think you're talking about the steak. Can I just say, because your eyes are telling me there's more. There's more. Ooh, like you can eat this dinner, but there's more on the plate. Hey, like what? What? I love it. I love it. I love it. Carrie, for me, like I didn't watch Hitchcock until much later, but I kind of grew up watching a lot of black and white comedies, and for me, Bringing Up Baby from 1938, which I was barely a twinkle in my father's eye.
Oh,
but
boy.
I mean, listen, 1938 was a long time ago, but he did Bringing Up Baby with Katharine Hepburn, which is a classic for a reason. And the first thing I saw him in, and I remembered seeing him in and being completely enamored with him, was His Girl Friday. And you spoke about the banter, and he has this rapid fire, it's a thing of beauty. It's him and Rosalind Russell. And the banter is so good because everything she throws at him, he throws back. And it's truly something, again, like you said, if you want to be a screenwriter, if this is something you are thinking about even loosely, you should be watching these movies. And, His Girl Friday is from 1940. That same year, he did The Philadelphia Story again with Katharine Hepburn. It's kind of like, for me, it's like looking at Stevie Wonder's albums from the 70s and kind of going, you put out a classic album every year, like for the beginning of the 70s. And that's Cary Grant's career. It's kind of like, bam, 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 just hit. But the bit I want to play is from His Girl Friday, and it's this conversation that he's having with Rosalind Russell. She's returned into his life. They're in the newsroom, and things are just, about to pop off.
How long is it?
How long is what?
You know what? How long is it since we've seen each other?
Oh, well, let's see. I spent 6 weeks in Reno, then Bermuda. About 4 months, I guess. Seems like yesterday to me.
Maybe it was yesterday, Hildy. Been seeing me in your dreams?
No, no, Mama doesn't dream about you anymore, Wally. You wouldn't know the old girl now.
Ah, yes, I would. I'd know you any time, any place.
Anywhere. Ah, you're repeating yourself, Walter. That's the speech you made the night you proposed.
Yeah, I know that you still remember
Of
it.
course I remember it. If I didn't remember it, I wouldn't have divorced you.
Bitch. Boop, 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 boop. It's kind of like so great. I remember watching that, and you know, again, you go back and you watch the things that you loved as a child, and you're like, oh, this is actually quite racist in parts.
Yeah.
So there's like a whole thing. But I love this idea of, and that was like a very common thing, this idea of independent women who divorced their husbands and moved on, and then of course the Leo was too great, and they came back.
Right. They had to come back.
They had to come back. But I love Hildy and I love Wally, and together I think they had this really crackling energy that as a child was thrilling for me to watch long before I knew what, you know, unresolved sexual tension. I was like, wow, I just really enjoy this. I don't know why I enjoy this.
Yes.
And then you get older and you're like, oh, because they were going to do it later. I see. But I really, really, truly, I can't get enough of Cary Grant in that mode when he's just kind of being this, you know, just this hot, vital,
Right.
young, kind of, you know, smart, sexy thing. It's kind of like the dream. You want a guy who's going to, like, you know, intellectually spar with you. And Cary really kind of gave you that.
But also very funny because one of my favorites from those black and white movies is Arsenic and Old Lace.
It's a classic for a reason.
Directed by Frank Capra, based on the play by Joseph Kesselring. Cary Grant plays Mortimer, whose aunts have been killing people.
Listen, we've all got a couple of, you know, dodgy aunts. Let's be very honest.
Oh my gosh. And he is hilarious in this movie. And, you know, you would think that because, you know, this is like 1944, I think. Yes, 1944. So you wouldn't think that necessarily all of the humorous bits would translate to watching it in 2018. But they still do for the most part. And it's just so good, not only because of the writing, but also because of Cary Grant's delivery.
Right.
He's just so, he cannot believe that his aunts are putting people in the window seats, you know, burying them in the backyard and stuff. It's just great. I
It's
love
wonderful.
that movie.
I mean, listen, you may have seen there was a Coen Brothers remake recently. I mean, not that recently, but don't watch that. Go watch the original. Watch the 1944 original because Cary Grant will absolutely steal your heart. He's so good. Everybody in that movie is just firing on all cylinders, and you should watch it.
Absolutely. And another thing about Cary Grant, you know, he kind of comes from a working class, quote unquote, humble background. And he became one of the richest men in Hollywood at his time. And he made it a point to, you know, surround himself with, as you Brits say, posh society.
Nobody has ever said that, but I like you thinking that we would say that posh society.
You know, because he wanted to learn and he wanted to be able to fit in that world. And I think that that's something that I admire, that he wanted to, I don't know, elevate himself in a certain way, even though it's like material stuff or whatever. But he was still just like, yes, I came from this place, but now I'm here and I'm going to fit in and you're going to deal with me.
I mean, years before Joanne the Scammer, there was Carrie the Scammer. Like, he was a man born Archie Leach, which, let's be very fucking honest, you're not going to be a movie star if you're called Archie Leach.
Right.
There's something about the sounds that just don't quite work. But what I do enjoy is the fact that he was like, nah, fuck you. I might be poor. I might be coming from a humble background, but I'm going to get to your level and then I'm going to beat you at it. And he did it. He did it. So listen, fuck capitalism, but yay, Cary Grant. He did it. Yay.
I'd invite you to my bedroom if I had a bedroom.
So we want to move on a little bit to one of your favorites, Bim. Gene Kelly. Talk to me.
All right. So listen. I feel like every week I say, oh, that was the moment I knew I was straight. But trust me, when I saw Gene Kelly dance, when I was like, I don't know, 9 or 10. I think it was around the time I read Lord of the Rings because I think Aragorn, reading Aragorn was when I thought, oh no, I'm straight. But then confirmed to me by watching Gene Kelly dance. And there is something about watching Gene Kelly dance. And part of the reason that it's so compelling is that his body is not the body of a dancer that Hollywood was used to at the time. So for many people, the idea of a, you know, the classic, you know, dance, whatever of the time was a Fred Astaire.
Yeah.
Kind of bird-boned, very delicate looking, clearly very strong and very able, but also kind of small, slight, very genteel. And Gene Kelly, in comparison, looks like a motherfucking brute.
Yeah.
You know, he's kind of like wide-shouldered and he's got these narrow hips and like sturdy thighs, you know, big legs. And this motherfucker came in and was just like the most graceful twinkle toes you have ever seen in your life. And that, I think, that dichotomy of looking like he was going to punch you, but then also kind of going, and now a pirouette. I remember watching it just entirely rapt, just staring at the screen like, who the fuck is this dancing angel, and how can I dance with him? And Gene Kelly, for me, I think the first thing I saw him in, I think, it was Singing in the Rain, which is the obvious stuff.
That's my Gene Kelly film. And I have a complicated relationship with musicals, but I remember watching them with my sister growing up because she was a theater kid in school. So I was
a kid to do love a musical.
Yeah.
I remember.
So I would watch them with her, and An American in Paris was such a grown film for me to be watching.
Yeah, it was. It really was. It was like a fucking gigolo. Like, are you kidding me? There are so many movies you can look back on and kind of be like, I should have been watching that at age 7.
But it was such a fun film, and I just remember feeling very happy watching it. And so that's the movie that I go back when, there's like a Gene Kelly moment in pop culture because we're remembering his birthday or remembering when he passed or something like that. I go back to An American in Paris because it's such a, I don't know, it's such like a, it's fun, but also a little naughty. There's so much wit again in the.
It's so witty. Yes.
Oh my gosh, I just love it. And to go back a little bit to what you were talking about, that he didn't have a quote unquote traditional dancer's body. He's from Pittsburgh. He was raised in Pittsburgh, and he looks like he's from Pittsburgh.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just kind of like, this is a body built for movement, and he put the grace in with that movement, and he was. I don't know. You can really, when you look at someone like Patrick Swayze, you see Gene Kelly.
100%. Absolutely his forefather in that vein of just kind of like gentle brute.
Yes.
Like a big dude who can do things, but also will, dance with you.
Yes.
God, more people should just take a leaf out of Gene Kelly's book and just do the thing. The other thing that I realized as well, because, we've spoken about theatre kids, I was one of them. I was very dramatic all the time. It's very sensitive.
Boy.
Please don't disturb my process. But I remember watching Hello Dolly many years ago for the first time and being absolutely astounded. And when I saw that it was directed by Gene Kelly. So he had this other career where he was doing other things. And, by all accounts, all the interviews that he did later in life, he was someone who was just incredibly, loved his art and worked himself. Apparently when he did the Singing in the Rain number, he was very, very ill. He had like a temperature of like 102.
Oh, no.
And he powered through. And apparently also, this is less charming, he was also a very hard taskmaster. And he was kind of terrible to Debbie Reynolds. Apparently she was quite ill as well. And he was like, do it anyway. And I was like, all right, calm down, bitch. Like, it's just a movie.
Yeah.
But, this idea of being a perfectionist who really sought out the best for his work, I am 100% here for. And I think that's another thing that makes him just wildly attractive. This was a man who worked at his craft and cared about the result. And you can see the result 50, 60 years later because somebody took the time to make it as perfect as it could be in the day. I find that wildly hot.
Yeah.
There's one thing I can tell you. If I'd have been around sooner, you'd know by now that you're very pretty. And I'm not making fun with you.
Speaking of wildly hot, Gregory Peck.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Gregory Peck, Atticus Finch. And
another problematic liberal.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
I saw To Kill a Mockingbird when I was a kid as well. And even as a kid, I was like, I don't know about this.
Right.
But I also understood a striking figure of a man.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know about this, but I know about him. He's quite, I think, he's someone's dad in that movie and he looks like someone's dad. And I don't, we all know how I feel about the word zaddy, but I remember looking at him and kind of going, yes, I bet you provide for your family.
And the thing is, like, when you look at promotional pictures from that time where he is posed in a certain way, not even for To Kill a Mockingbird, but just in general pictures that he posed for in magazines and whatever, he is beautiful. Just absolutely stunning. We'll have to find some pictures and maybe put them on our Tumblr or something.
Yes.
Just angles for days.
Just angles is exactly the word, Nicole. Oh, he was kind of like, it looked like he was put together by a team of engineers who were kind of like, all right, so this is the sine and the cosine and the tangent and the this, because they put his face together and it's just kind of like, wow, It works. It looks planned. You look like a city that has been planned on a grid. He's just really, really fucking hot.
And he would lose himself in his character, so you would lose those angles a little bit because he was playing whoever, whatever, that didn't call to be beautiful and attractive or whatever.
Yes.
But he was fascinating to look at.
Yes, he was. I remember watching Roman Holiday when I was a kid. And again, this idea of we all want to be like, princesses anyway, I suppose, to an extent. And I remember looking at Audrey Hepburn and kind of going, yeah, I can see the attraction.
But don't you have to work?
Work? No. Today's going to be a holiday.
But you don't want to do a lot of silly things.
Don't I? First wish, one sidewalk cafe coming right up.
That movie, again, was one of those things that kind of stuck in my head where I was like, oh, this is what romance should feel like. You should be on a moped in Rome. Like this is what it should be. But he had just so much. He like you said, he gave so much, even when he was doing quite subtle / gentle work.
Yeah.
And you'd look at him and you'd be like, oh, that's a man of substance who is doing things.
Yes.
He had heft.
And he was tall.
Yeah, it was.
He was like 6'3".
Oh, R.I.P. man.
And it's so interesting because the golden age of Hollywood, these people were tall. These men, the leading men, were tall. Like James Stewart was, I think, 6'3". So it's interesting to see this evolution where we get to these men today who aren't always quite as tall.
Right.
And nothing's wrong with that.
Nothing's wrong with that. I actually I think it's more democratic now, where you can have people of average height. Not everyone has to be 6'3".
Right.
I like the idea of us kind of democratizing to an extent anyway, because most of these men still are white.
Yes.
But this idea of democratizing in some way where we have skinny dudes and we have like short dudes, and these people also get to be sex symbols in as much as we still have that. I mean, you could argue about the star system of Hollywood having gone away, which I think is again a good thing, generally speaking. But I think I prefer the democracy of now and the movie stars of today. However, I can look to the past and kind of be like, do you know what? That was nice too. Actually, that's a really solid way for us to kind of move into the next part of this discussion, which is essentially the unbearable whiteness of Golden Age Hollywood.
Support for Thirst Aid Kit comes from RX Bar, a protein bar made with 100% whole ingredients.
Whether you like sweet or savory or chocolate or fruit flavors, there's an RX Bar for you.
Plus, they contain no artificial colors, preservatives, fillers, or added sugar.
They also come in 11 different flavors, including mixed berry. Has this got nuts in it?
It does.
What kind of nuts?
Part of the packaging shows us how many of each ingredients are included in the protein bar. So we have 3 egg whites, 6 almonds, 4 cashews, 2 dates.
That's the cashew I can take. Okay.
It's good. For 25% off your first order, visit rxbar.com/thirst and enter promo code THIRST at checkout. Once again, for 25% off, go to rxbar.com/thirst and enter the promo code THIRST.
Now, where to begin?
We've talked about Paul Newman advocating during the civil rights movement.
And beyond.
I can't speak to what these other men may have done, but back in the day, it was very difficult to find Black men, Latino men, Asian men. Definitely hard to find Native American men.
Listen. And that's just on the issue of race.
Yes.
There's all this other stuff.
Right. On screen as portrayed by the people who are actually identified, as Black, Asian, because getting into white men playing Asian characters.
All right. Ooh. So I'm glad you brought that up because Yul Brynner comes to mind.
Yes.
And he played the King of Siam. Now, Yul Brynner was a white man from Russia. Okay?
Yeah.
Let's just call that by its name. He also played Ramesses in The 10 Commandments. Like, this motherfucker had a whole line in playing not quite white.
Yeah.
You can argue with me regarding any number of things, but Yul Brynner was hot. And we can also acknowledge in that same universe, he was doing a lot of racist shit by playing these characters.
Yes.
So let's, to think about Hollywood at this time is to think about a very specific kind of beauty, a certain kind of look. And that look was Caucasian. And I think when we talk about interrogating who we fancy and why we fancy, it's important for us to understand that these things do not happen in a vacuum. We were given so little in terms of variety and choice that I think a lot of us imprinted a very specific idea of what is attractive, what is sexy. And these things are not by accident. It was formed that way. Exactly. And it's very important that when we discuss all our thirst objects, as we have done for all of season 1 and now in season 2, that we are always thinking about who's missing here.
Yes.
And that's a very real thing. And it's something that I know that I talk about with Nicole a lot, kind of like, you know, there's that old question, is he hot or is he white? And a lot of the time the answer is, fam, he's just white, you know. That's it. That's really all it is. Move on. And that is the thing that I think many people really kind of, you know, talk about, grapple with. We get your emails, we get your, you know, people are thinking about a lot of these things. And I want us all to think about it even more. I think however much we're thinking about it, we're not thinking about it enough.
Exactly. Now, there were Black men who were on screen at that time. In the very early days of Hollywood, there was Paul Robeson. Who's beautiful. I think he was very handsome.
Yes, great face.
Yeah. Then you also have, of course, Sidney Poitier. And there's a significant amount of time between these men, these leading men. But they always had to be very well put together when they were on screen.
Yep.
Right? If they weren't playing a working class person, right, you know, a porter or something like that.
The husband of a maid.
Right. Then they were somebody like a teacher, right? Someone who is buttoned up.
Very professional.
Yes.
You know, a doctor, a lecturer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not allowed to have any kind of romantic love interest unless it was another Black woman who was very fair-skinned.
Yes, if she was even given a name or like any real screen time.
Right. Then there's Harry Belafonte, yes. Now, Carmen Jones is an amazing film.
It's so hot.
Oh, my gosh. The promotional stills for that movie, insane.
Every single photo from that looks like just like they were filming it in the middle of like just tiny fires where everyone was just kind of combusting from the hotness. Everyone in there is just like smoking hot. Sadly, I don't find Harry Belafonte handsome outside of that movie, which is horrible. But I remember when we were talking about putting this episode together, we were like, Harry Belafonte? I guess. So that was another reason. So listen, our production meetings are very, very vocal things where we talk about who we're doing, why, who we're doing, why we're doing them, etc. And this one in particular came up a lot where we were kind of like, all right, how do we do this? And Nicole pointed it out. Sidney Poitier was never, ever presented to me growing up in any of the movies I saw as a hot prospect. He was somebody's father or somebody's husband or, you know, and that's the other thing as well. The scenarios in which Black and other non-white actors appeared in was one of strife. And it's very difficult for me to fancy you if you're kind of chatting about, you know, the racism of the day. It's hard enough in big 2018. Back then when the shit was overt and just oppressive in a way that you could not escape. It's very difficult for me to look at Sidney Poitier and kind of be like, that man is going through it. Now I want to climb into his lap.
Yes, right.
So these are very difficult things. And like I said, we're talking like, you know, we've been talking very much about, along the lines of Black actors. But then consider how much worse it was for Asian actors or, you know, whoever. And this is, again, going back to talking about John Cho, for example, and why it's so important that he is this leading man in Hollywood. We spoke about it back in season 1 and we're carrying on with it. The reason why it's so difficult for people to conceive of John Cho as a romantic lead, you know, a leading man in Hollywood, is because we've been given so few examples of Asian men in that particular light. So these things are all interconnected. They are all interwoven. And yeah, like we said, question, interrogate, talk to yourself.
Also, you have to look at stereotypes change depending on what you're trying to prove with your stereotype. So to talk about Asian men in Hollywood, either they are the martial arts expert or they are the desexed friend who is, you know, kind of feminine. So is he going to kick your ass or is he a girl? Like, what are you trying to say?
Right.
You know, again, this kind of goes back to these old Hollywood movies where you've got Mickey Rooney playing an Asian character, a caricature, just embarrassment.
It's embarrassing. That's exactly the word. You look back on it and you're like, Jesus, who let this fly? Who? I mean, the answer is the world, but still.
It's just ridiculous. And so, you know, it's hard, like you said, to look at a person who's playing a bus driver who is so underpaid
and harried and angry.
Yeah, that, you know, he's just in a suit and tie, even to drive a bus,
Yes.
you know, and then he comes home and his wife, you know, they're trying to like figure out bills and stuff. How are you supposed to find that attractive?
Right. It's aspiration, right?
Right.
That's what a lot of fancying kind of comes down to. And I do think about the ways in which, like you said, useful stereotypes at the time, you know, the idea of Sidney Poitier as a respectable man, you know, the guy who, there was lots of talk around his casting in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and they had to make him a widower as opposed to a divorcee because he couldn't even be divorced because that would besmirch his good black name. And I keep thinking about the ways in which we kind of swallow all of these things, and we don't know we're even swallowing them half the time. You know, we just have what is there. And I think that's basically the final lesson regarding today's episode of Golden Baes. It's kind of like, here are 4 people, but also what a fucked up system those 4 people came out of.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
this week we are going to be doing travels about people who are dead, R.I.P.
Yes. May they be at peace.
May they be at peace. But I feel like we're honoring their memories and their legacies by writing these fanfics. Don't laugh. I'm being very serious.
Oh my gosh. I hope the states don't come after us.
No, we should point out that these are fictionalized
Yes,
versions
absolutely.
of these wonderful dead people.
Right.
All right. So, Nicole, I'm very ready to hear what you've come up with. Who have you written your travel about?
Mr. Paul Newman.
Shocking. I did not see that coming. A part of me, I have to say, is very worried that we have written exactly the same scenario for Paul Newman.
Right, because we don't share our drabbles with each other.
Right.
We just read them and get natural reactions right off the bat.
Right. So take it away, Nicole. Let's see what you've come up with.
If I listened closely, I could just make out the sounds of a brass band busking in the French Quarter.
Oh my God.
I leaned out of the window of my second-story bedroom, hoping to hear the music better and wondering where Paul was. I laughed at myself. I'm too old to play Juliet, but for a man like Paul, I'd be lovesick on a balcony any day. Looking for me? His voice broke through my foolish pining, and I turned to see him leaning against the bedroom door, a few days stubble showcasing a naughty smirk. Yes. He knows I love feeling the roughness of his beard against my hands, neck, other places. He was already unbuttoning his shirt, so I rushed to help him, my outstretched hands betraying my relief and anticipation. I asked if anyone saw him. He said, "Only you can see me, sweetheart," before he clicked the light switch, leaving us to fumble through darkened familiarity, the distant street musicians losing their hold on my attention.
Is it? Is it?
Okay.
Wait, your hands are reaching? You rush to help him take off his shirt? He has hands, Nicole. He can take his own shirt off, all
He
right?
might need some help. It could have been a long journey across town. I don't know.
And everyone knows when you've had a long journey across town, it's your hands that get tired.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
You are such a waste. I hate you. I hate you so much.
Oh my gosh. But can you imagine? Again, this is just kind of that nod to, you know, the times that Paul Newman lived through.
Did anyone see you?
Yes.
Right.
I just had to do a quick little, like, you know, some of this swirl is a little taboo.
Oh my God.
I'm so ridiculous.
Do you know what? I believe your middle name is actually ridiculous. Nicole Ridiculous Perkins. I am proud to know you. Well,
but Bim, you have a drabble.
I do have a drabble.
And who is your drabble about?
It's about fucking Paul Newman, isn't it? So you're going to see something that comes up in my drabble that's already come up in yours.
Uh-oh. We are too synced.
It's actually scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, mine's also about Paul Newman.
Okay.
And I, unlike you, decided not to even mention the fact that we would have been together in difficult times racially. Because we're going full fantasy here.
Sure, absolutely.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Paul's beard is the fullest I've ever seen it. He calls it his homemade disguise. But I tell him all it does is make the distinctive blue of his eyes stand out even more.
Bitch!
We've been at the Malibu beach house for a month now, and the sun has lightened his hair and deepened his tan. Right now, his famous assets, the only blue eyes I will ever care about, are hidden from view. His face is less stern when he is at rest, less obviously beautiful than the big screen makes it. Asleep, Paul Newman, the movie star, becomes something else. The creases in his forehead are less pronounced, his mouth even more generous. I trace my finger across his bottom lip now, and he squirms a little as a slight smile crosses his face. I replace my finger with my lips. And after a couple of seconds, he stirs. He squints as he comes to, the sun glinting off the gold of his beard. You got the sun in your eyes, I say softly. No, he returns gruffly. That's all you.
My Tennessee auntie came out. I don't even smoke Newports, but it was just all.
Lord, look
Good
at that.
gravy.
Good gravy. All right, Grandma Nicole. Okay, so that was my drabble. I like your reaction. It felt honest.
Yes.
Felt phlegmy, which I'm always here for.
I don't know where that came from. So
head on over to Twitter to vote. There will be a poll on our Twitter, which is at First Aid Kit.
Yes. And we like to give you guys a day to, listen to the episode, absorb it, talk about it with your friends if you want to. And then we put up the poll the next day. So, you've been thinking about it and it's been marinating in your mind,
That's
right?
exactly what it's been doing, marinating. Yeah. Listen. We say this every week, but we mean it every week. There are no losers here. And more importantly, we also want to hear your fanfic. So if you have something about Paul Newman or Gregory Peck or Gene Kelly, mate.
Cary Grant, let us know.
Send it in. It's basically firstaidkit@buzzfeed.com, and we will read it and we will laugh at it and we will squirm at it. Just send us your fanfic. Nicole, man.
Yeah.
That felt like a lot this week.
It did.
I don't mean to toot our own horns, but we fucking killed the drabbles
We
this
did.
week. All right, cool.
Toot, motherfucker.
Motherfucking toot. Okay. First Aid Kit is produced by us, Bim Adewunmi and Nicole Perkins, Julia Furlan and TK Dutes.
Our music is by Tanya Morgan. You can follow us on Twitter at Thirst Aid Kit. We're also on Tumblr at thirstaidkitpodcast.tumblr.com. Sometimes we even answer questions on there. We're at Tennessee Whiskey Woman. That's TN Whiskey with an E, Woman, and Bimadew, BIMADEW.
Now, are you looking to refresh your thirst palate? Well, let us recommend you a sorbet. Leave us a brief message for Thirst Sommelier on 765-884-4778. That's 7658 Thirst. For our international listeners, you can leave us a tiny brief voice memo and send that to firstaidkit@buzzfeed.com.
Thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find us. Plus, we love reading what you have to say. Feel free to live tweet your listen using the hashtag TACPOD. That's TAKPOD. And remember, you can reach us via email at thirstaidkit@buzzfeed.com.
We'll be back next week. In the meantime, you know what you have to do. Just stay thirsty, friends. You good?
Yes.
You good, cuz?
Oh, shit. Let me drink my water. My lemonade.
Lord.